It definitely is. You know, we've been talking all week long. Last week, people allowed in limited access, having to leave at 5 o'clock tonight. They do not have to leave. They can sleep in their own beds. That is, if they were fortunate enough to have their homes still here. And this is the first time they've been able to do this in more than a week, Brittany. And we were invited into one woman's house, one couple's house today over by the Gatlinburg Towers. Cheryl Day, she said that she's been cleaning up since Sunday. Lots of ash, lots of smoke in her house. She was there the night of the fire, was one of the last ones to leave that night. So coming back and being able to stay in her home is also a very emotional time.
I was just kind of praying a lot that we would get out safely and that our condo would be saved. But as you see, it's just a little bit of soot. And
yeah, so she's very thankful that she does still have a home to live in. They've been there for over a decade. They retired there. She said the night of the fires, that is a 7-story building there. The night of the fire, she went upstairs to the 7th floor to check on one of their elderly neighbors, and he actually decided he was going to evacuate with them, which of course, you know, kind of put her at ease, and she was glad that she was able to help them. At that point, it was about getting everyone out safely, and so they're glad to be back in there, be sleeping in their homes tonight, but still a long road ahead as far as recovery for the entire city goes.
Oh, sure. But in this woman's home, she had family heirlooms like a lot of people do that were more than 100 years old. So a lot of things in there that were very, very special to her. But for a lot of folks, one of the reasons why it's taking several days for people to be allowed to go back in their homes is obviously safety. And one of those things is restoring power to all of the affected areas, which thankfully most of that has been done. But for some of the harder hit areas like Wiley Oakley and Cliff Branch and some of the places that we're talking about more extensively, that are the areas that are receiving extensive utility work, folks say that those areas really, there's only a fraction of the homes left on those streets. Wow. So it's taken them a little bit of extra time. Good news, though, they do expect to have power restored to some of those homes by 10 o'clock tonight and hopefully have those streets open tomorrow morning. Some of the side streets, though, in that area, they're going to take a little bit longer to get the power restored just because it's so hard to get those big trucks in there, hard to get cars down the roads to start restoring the power to those areas. So they say expect several weeks for power to be back on in some of those homes. But because there is so much damage to this area, just to put this into perspective, power companies were bringing in 20 tractor trailers full of power poles into the area.
That's a lot of power poles.
From our Ski Mountain substation to the Wiley Oakley Welcome Center on the spur, there's 509 customers on that particular circuit. Well, right now only 8 of them exist.
That just puts that into a different level of perspective to see how many homes are still standing in that stretch where they're talking about right there. Essentially, they tell me that they're rebuilding the entire system. And again, this is something really staggering that they were talking about. One of the last disasters that we all can relate to is the blizzard of 93. He said in the blizzard of 93, all of Sevier County, they had 300 poles that needed to be replaced. That's the entire county for the blizzard. Here in this area that's been affected, they've had to replace 400 poles. That's 100 more than they did for the whole blizzard.
In a smaller area.
In the whole county, yes, in a much smaller area. Pretty staggering to put that into perspective.
So, I mean, as you guys can see, a lot of hard work being done. These people back into their homes tonight, but they still have a long way to go.
Clearing through all of the debris and the rubble just to get power and gas restored to some of these homes who are in the affected areas is not a quick and it's not an easy process. I talked to some electric crews today. They basically tell me they're rebuilding their entire system. They say some streets only have just a fraction of the homes that they had before. They say they're replacing 400 power poles because of the fires. And just to put that into some perspective for you, in the whole blizzard of 93, the entire county lost 300. So 100 more power poles have been lost in this isolated area from the fires. Now, some of the bigger streets that needed a lot of attention with utility work, most people have their power back on, which is a good thing. But some of the areas that needed the extensive utility attention, like Wiley Oakley and Cliff Branch, they tell me that those powers should be restored by about 10 o'clock tonight. But some of the smaller streets in the area are going to take more time just because it's so hard to get some of those bigger trucks into the areas. Now, as for the gas, this is sort of a two-part process. So all of the gas was turned off in the whole system on Monday night, about a week and 2 days ago. So to turn it back on, they have to go back to each meter individually just because there's so much pressure in this system. So they did all of that last week. And then they have to go back again to turn it back on. And it's slowing things down because there has to be somebody at the home to be able to do that safely, because they don't want to have any gas leak into their home. So making sure that everything is turned off before they restore those meters. So they still have about 800 meters to turn back on. So like I said, it's a long process. It's a complicated process, and people are hoping to have the power and all of the gas restored. Hopefully all of them will be back on in the next several weeks, but they're asking for patience because the most important thing that they're doing here is making sure all of this gets turned back on safely. Reporting in Gatlinburg, Brittany Tarwater, Local 8 News.
All right,